Nearly half of all primary school-aged children in Nottingham come from an ethnic minority family. But this diversity isn't being reflected in the subjects taught at school. That's the claim made by a Nottinghamshire charity working to promote global and anti-racist perspectives. The MUNDI Global Education Centre say the national curriculum has too narrow a view of what constitutes Britishness, and that diversity and anti-racism shouldn't be taught to children as a separate topic, but integrated into every aspect of teaching instead. Jane Daffe from the Council's Inclusive Learning Team and Raul Valdivia, the Education and Learning Manager at the MUNDI organisation, are here to explain more. Welcome, lovely to have you with us.
Hello, thank you.
Jane, tell us what's wrong with the way children are currently being taught in schools. Is there anything wrong?
We have some excellent teaching in schools. The purpose of the GARP resource, which is our shortened version of Global and Anti-Racist Perspectives, was to broaden the curriculum and to include diversity within the curriculum, so that the curriculum that's taught in schools reflects the pupil population that you've just described, so that children feel as though they're recognised, the experiences, the perspectives that are being taught.
You mentioned this GARP resource. Raul, tell us a bit about what that is.
The GARP is a resource produced by a group of teachers, local teachers, with the support from Jane and other practitioners in Nottingham. And the idea is to have a resource that teachers can use to incorporate anti-racist and global perspectives in every single subject in the curriculum.
Why do we need to do this? Surely if the playground is becoming increasingly diverse and multiculturalism is becoming the norm, doesn't that mean racism is being tackled without the need to actively teach it?
I think we're very aware of racism, particularly in the media currently, whether it's through football or whether it's through the ongoing Stephen Lawrence story, or recently last week the headlines about migration and benefits. So it's very important that children have an opportunity to explore some of those issues in a safe environment, and perhaps challenge and be challenged around some of the attitudes that they may hear either at home or in the media or on the street. So that's one of the purposes of the GARP resource.
And yet actively not teaching it as a block separate education. It's not a class for anti-racism. That's not what you want, is it?
No, we would like this to be integrated into every single subject. If you look, for example, at the history of multicultural education in Britain, you start at the beginning with these ideas of assimilation, for example, and then you move on to this idea of the melting pot, okay? And now we're talking about actually recognizing that there are patterns of discrimination, and there are quite a lot of stereotypes and prejudice when it comes to certain groups in society. So the idea is to engage young learners, children and young people in schools in a critical discussion about what perhaps is perceived as a predominant view of the world and society.
How do you begin to teach anti-racism in maths, science, PE?
It can be done overtly, obviously, but also the main purpose of the GARP resource is that it's almost without recognising the fact that we are using images, using resources that are from examples across the world, from lots of different cultures and nationalities, celebrating the achievements of people that are not just British or European. And sometimes it's unspoken. It may be as simple as just an image that reflects a different culture or heritage.
Can maths and science be taught in, or are they currently being taught in a way that isn't anti-racist? I mean, is science currently being taught in a racist way?
I don't think science is being taught in a racist way. I think there is good evidence that teachers in our schools teach the vast majority of what they were themselves taught. There's been very little change in the curriculum over the previous decades. And teachers are very busy people, and they may be subject specialists, but they may not be specialists in the whole world and every country on every continent and every culture and faith. Therefore, this resource really does a lot of that hard work for them. We spent several years researching perspectives and resources so that teachers themselves have a tool that will direct them to look for new resources to incorporate into their teaching.
And this is a resource aimed at both primary and secondary schools across the country, in fact, not just in Nottingham. How have you found teachers and schools have reacted to it so far?
We're very proud that this came out of Nottingham. It was, as Raul said, initially 4 teachers in Nottingham. So it's a teaching resource written by teachers. Because it's unique and covers the whole of the curriculum, local authorities and schools in lots of other parts of the country have purchased it, and we've trained groups of schools, groups of head teachers right across the country. In fact, I'll be down in Devon next month doing a workshop at a conference on the GARP resource. So it's good news for Nottingham.
I heard a statistic actually that your resource is most used in the Isle of Wight. Is that right? Every school in the Isle of Wight?
Strangely, yes. Strangely, I think every school on the Isle of Wight does have a copy of the GARP resource, again from a former training event.
Without the statistics to hand, I'd imagine the Isle of Wight isn't as diverse as Nottingham is. Do you think it's more or less important that places like that have this resource?
I think it's important, that this resource is used in any place across Britain, but particularly in those areas where perhaps there isn't much of a chance to look at various perspectives. That's where a resource like the GARP resource, Global and Anti-Racist Perspective in Schools, can be particularly meaningful and valuable for teachers and for children.
Have you had anyone who just doesn't get why you're doing this, what this is about? Because surely there are some people out there who think, actually, if the playground is diverse, you don't actively need to teach this in any way. Have you come across anyone who doesn't get why you're doing this?
Well, I think there is an assumption, that just by having a group of people from different nationalities, for example, you automatically solve the problem of racism, for example. It's almost like thinking of a magic bullet, that will change everything, and it's not like that. It doesn't operate like that. There needs to be some kind of pedagogical work, encouraging young children to think critically about some of their own assumptions, some of their own perspectives on life, and trying to enrich those perspectives by incorporating other ideas, that might come from different cultures. And that's the work that MUNDI and the resource that the GARP resource developed in partnership with some local teachers have done.
So how can we find out more about this resource?
Well, the contact details for the resource are on a website, which is www.garp.me.uk, I believe.
That's correct.
And it can be sourced from the MUNDI office where Raul works. Do you have the contact details?
I have the contact number. So if there is someone listening to this program interested in purchasing this resource, if they could call this number 0115 845 6418. So that's the number of MUNDI Global Education Centre, the educational charity in Nottingham, promoting this resource.